In this episode, we're stepping into the snowy streets of Bedford Falls to explore one of cinema's most beloved characters, a hero who didn't see himself as a hero, and every man who had a chance to experience what life in his town would have been like if he had never been born. Join us as we dive into the heart, hope, and legacy of George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life. Here we go. And here we are again for another episode of Greatest Characters in Pop Culture History. I am Nick, and today we're talking about George Bailey of It's a Wonderful Life. And it is indeed a wonderful life because today my guest is Dean Legiro, the co-host of 3324 podcast. And Dean, anything good that I do on this podcast, I have learned from you and Eric, and anything bad that I do is just my own lack of skill. So thank you for being on.
You're welcome. And anything we've done right or wrong, I've probably stolen from another podcaster as well. So it's just, we just circulate the information and we share and we share it. And that's the great thing about a podcasting community is there's room for everybody. And we always want to see everybody succeed. And I'm so happy that you've been talking about it for a while. And then you finally, all of a sudden it just appeared. And I was so happy.
Out of the blue.
So happy and excited for you. So
I'm still technically in my soft launch phase. That's how I like to, I'm still experimenting.
So you're going to do a grand opening with clowns and balloons and ice cream, Mr. Saw. I mean, is that what a grand opening does?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, you've done like, how many episodes are you guys up to? Like over 150, 200,
200
right?
and 255,
wow. Yeah.
Probably more than that with like the little special. We used to do little special edition episodes, but 255, give or take.
Well, this is our Happy Dozen, number 12, episode number 12. So thank you. So yeah, we're talking about George Bailey. It's a Wonderful Life. So every time I have a guest on, I tell them, who do you think is the greatest character of all time? And you gave me a few, but this is what we landed on. And I think this is a really good one, George Bailey. So why don't you tell me a little bit about why you think George Bailey is the greatest character of all time? One of the greatest characters of all time.
One of the greatest, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because it's interesting, because we've talked about it in the past in other shows, but just the strangeness of the film It's a Wonderful Life, how it's become such a beloved Christmas film that really isn't much about Christmas. No Santa, no reindeer, literally no holiday season till the last 20 minutes or so. And it's just happenstance that the events that happen just happen to happen on Christmas Eve. It doesn't really align with the events are waiting until Christmas to happen. It just so happens that this is when these things happen. And when I rewatched it, it really is a character study about this guy who all these things just kind of happen around him. And no one ever, there's one person, maybe a person and a half, that actually realize what he wants out of life. So there is great things to take away from the film. It totally delivers where it should. But when you watch it, there's a lot of subtle things that are going on that really enhance the character and make it more than just typical Christmas fare. It's not something you put on like in the background, like Rudolph or Frosty or the Grinch that you can kind of have on and it's colorful and there's songs every so often. This is more of a drama, a 2-hour drama in a 20-minute Christmas film.
Yeah. And here's a guy who seems selfless, seems such a goody two-shoes. Like, he gives up his dreams of becoming like a global traveler and an architect so he could stay and take over his family business, right? This building and loan to help his town, to help his community, to save their houses, to help them build a house. And he just delays. He always thinks, I think, that he is going to follow his dream and be that globetrotter. But then after a while, he kind of settles into it. And then the tragedy happens where, Uncle Billy, right? Just kind of loses the money, right? It's stolen by, Mr. Potter. And, he's going to lose everything. And that's when he gives up. And he's like, what's it all worth? It would have been better off if I had never been born. And that's the twist. So is there anyone that doesn't know the twist by this time? Is it when people think of It's a Wonderful Life, they think about, like you said, those last 20 minutes or so where, Clarence, the angel, comes and it's like shows him what life would have been like without it.
Yeah. It's literally a different it literally becomes it starts off as a fantasy,
Mhm.
but all we hear is voiceover in the beginning.
Right.
We see, like, a picture of the universe and some stars blinking, and then at the end, it literally becomes a fantasy.
Mhm.
Literally that when Clarence arrives, like, the whole movie change
Shifts.
it leaves this dire reality that we've been living in. We literally watching a guy crumble over the course of, since he was a kid, from
Mhm.
when he got slapped by Mr. Gower.
Yeah.
And then the death of his father and all these things kind of inform the next set of events. The death of his father then starts off the next chain reaction of him not being able to leave. And the discussion with his father is, I think, is really important. He realizes how good of a man his father is. And he talks about the sacrifice. He goes, if you're not willing to lie down to Potter in this town, this is no place for it. Even his father realizes it, but I think George has more of his father in him
Mhm.
than he realizes. He wants to not be like that. He wants to get out of this little town.
Right. Yeah. When was the first time you saw this movie? Was it when you were a kid and it was just became like a annual tradition like most
It
people,
wasn't
or
a thing when I was a kid. It didn't. I always remember the title of the film being around, probably, in the New York area, probably playing on Channel 11 or Channel
Mhm.
9 or Channel 5, one of those ones, because of its
Yeah.
entry into the public domain, but I don't remember as a kid sitting down and watching this thing. It was probably much later, probably in my late 20s, early 30s, when I
Mhm.
started working for Suncoast Motion Picture Company, the now defunct video retailer. Because we would have, during the holiday season, we would have Christmas movies in rotation, just playing them on the screens. And of course, It's a Wonderful Life became one of those. And really, that's when I became much more acquainted with it
Yeah.
as a piece of film.
It's really good. I mean, why do you think it didn't do so well when it first came out? I mean, there's a bunch of reasons. We've talked about this before, but when it first came out, it got mixed reviews. It was a
Yeah.
financial disaster. I mean, it wasn't a blockbuster. It got Academy Award nominations, but the only one it won was this technical award because they invented this snowflake effect on film
Yeah.
where it made it look like real snow.
Yeah.
Because up until then, it was just like every time they tried to do a snow scene on celluloid, it looked terrible. It
Yeah.
looked fake, and this made it look real. So that
Yeah.
was the only award it got.
I mean, I don't think people knew what to make of the film, right? Again, like, the very beginning of the opening credits kind of give you a holiday feeling, like they're opening a book and they're showing you the title and it's kind of got snow, and you don't get that. You literally do not. You don't even get, like, in all the years. Think of it this way too. The movie takes him from, like, a kid to in his probably early 40s. So easily
Mhm.
20, 25 years. There's not even a Christmas acknowledged in throughout the 25 years. So it's not even like the movie stops in on a Christmas to
Yeah.
during its timeline. It totally ignores it. Right. And until you get to the very end. So I'm guessing people probably thought, well, where was Santa? Because the following year, Miracle on 34th Street would come out,
Mhm.
which is a straight up fantasy, but grounded in reality, but with Santa and all
Yeah.
those things that you expect from a Christmas film, a live action Christmas film. So
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. I think people just like, okay, like, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess, but
Even when I see like those early posters of it, the movie posters, it doesn't really give anything away in terms of
huh,
the plot or what that ending will be. It's just kind of like this kind of Frank Capra happy, kind of thing. Like that
average
first
Joe, the Frank
Yeah,
Capra
first
average
hour and a
Joe.
half of the movie, it's like everything all the cliches you hear about Capra movies, right?
Yeah,
But the ending gets so dark. I
yeah,
mean,
it goes from a movie that's really not about anything
mhm,
because it's really not going
slice
anywhere.
of life, right? It's about showing this guy
Yeah,
grow up.
there's nothing at stake. Things just keep happening to him. He has kids. He gets married. He gets homes for people. Like, there's not really anything that's leading up to a great struggle or an end game, as it were. What we do see is just this slow burn of a person.
Yeah,
And maybe people just didn't realize what they were getting too, is this is more of a character study about a guy who just keeps having things happen to him,
yeah,
and on the exterior, it rolls off, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's just how George is a great guy." And they don't think anything else of him and the internal struggles. Everybody kind of
yeah,
dismisses, when he doesn't go to college and he stays at the building alone, and then his brother Harry comes back, and then he's going to go work in Buffalo, and his dreams keep getting pushed aside, but everybody just they kind of acknowledge, "I know you've been waiting for me, and I'm
uh,
not going to let you down." But then you don't hear anything. Like, there's no really acknowledgement of what he's been giving up. So and he keeps pushing it down, right? And it put and you know, there are a lot of points, especially I noticed in the film, every time Sam Wainwright is involved, he gets a certain look about him. Either jealousy because of Mary, or that
Mhm.
Sam represents the life that George actually doesn't have, because Sam breezes in and out of Bedford Falls. Hey, we're going
Yeah.
down to Florida. Why don't you come with us and drive down? I can't. I have to stay. So
Mhm.
it's just that
That's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, he sees this guy who's made a success of his life. He's got a ton of money. He got in on the ground floor in plastics. He's got the women behind him, and George is doing the right thing and not getting a reward.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't perceive that he's getting a reward, right? Because
Yeah.
he's not doing what he wants with his life, so he perceives that his life has no value as a result, right?
Yeah.
He's not seeing the other things. He's saying, "Well, I'm not." That's like me saying, "I want to be a football player." And I never become a football player, so my life has no value because I didn't, right?
Yeah.
And that's what he is perceiving, that this is
Exactly.
all just
And that's
stuff
what
I'm
makes that
doing. Yeah,
finale so important
yeah,
because he does
yeah,
see then the value that he did have. We don't see it sometimes, the impact we have on lives. And, you know, I always loved when I was a kid that, you know, once Clarence comes in, that's the movie for me. I'm like, yeah, this is great. This is so cool. But if you didn't have that beginning and you saw that journey, all of that wouldn't make sense. None of that. It builds everything up to that. Like you see
yeah,
him saving his brother's life when he falls through the ice. You know, you see him, you know, when Mr. Gower, the pharmacist, gets, you know, he's drunk and accidentally puts poison in the medicine, right? It's George who saves the day. He's like, look, you know, and then he gets slapped and his ear gets, you know,
yep,
gets busted. And, you know, and then, of course, giving away his dreams. He gives away the money that he would have used, you know, to save the bank, to
yeah,
save his dad, you know, to save everybody. And then it ends up staying and running the bank.
yeah. Yeah, the superpower of this film is that it, like you said, it slow rolls you for an hour and a half to 2 hours. You don't know why you're watching these events because they're all distant. You know, him saving Harry is one thing, and then getting slapped by Mr. Gower is another thing, and saving the bank. Like these are all things, but they're not connected. None of this gets tied up until the very end, which
Mhm.
again, everything, just like the Sixth Sense, right? All of
Yeah,
a sudden, all the clues from the Sixth Sense that you
exactly.
didn't
Yeah.
realize were going on, all of a sudden come crashing down. It becomes that ripple effect, the butterfly effect. If you didn't do this, these other things wouldn't happen. If you hadn't done this insignificant thing that you think is insignificant, this other branch, almost like a multiverse, like these other
Yeah,
branches would have opened up.
exactly.
So then we get to realize why we've been watching all this stuff, is that
Mhm.
it's at the end, they're just going to push the whole thing and say, well, here's all the stuff you've watched. Here's why it's important now.
Yeah.
It wasn't important until this last event that
Yeah.
happened when he's going to go try and kill himself.
Yeah. So I'm going to quickly just talk about
Sure.
the origin of it before we delve more into the character. This all started from a short story. I mean, I guess it was a booklet at first written by Philip Van Doren Stern. It was called The Greatest Gift, A Christmas Tale, right? So it was meant to be like a kind of a Christmas story because it takes place on
Sure.
Christmas Eve. And apparently it was inspired by A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. So it's not, you know, completely similar to the plot, but it is about this kind of supernatural thing that
Mhm.
happens. So it's a character called George Pratt. He's dissatisfied with his life. That iconic scene on the bridge when he's thinking about taking his life. And then it's not an angel per se in the story. It's just this kind of strange character who's like dressed funny and basically says, "Oh, you want to, you know, see what life would have been like if you'd never been born? Let me tell you." So he gives him like a bag of brushes. And it's like, if anybody asks you, you're just because you don't exist anymore, but people are going to see you. So he goes door to door, sees all the people in his life and how their lives have changed, sees the woman he had married before this happened, and now she's married to someone else. And the twist in that is when it finally, he realizes, okay, life would have been worse without me. Then in the end, just like in the movie, you hear the bell ring and you see
Mhm.
he gets a book from Clarence. You're like, this wasn't just a figment of his imagination. Clarence really was there. This really
Yeah.
happened. In the novel, it was like she has the brush. So it really happened, right? I guess. But he had trouble publishing this, Philip Van Doren Stern. So he self-published it as a booklet, gave it to his friends. Then eventually it got published in 1944. And then it ran in a couple of magazines, Reader's Scope in 1944. And then in Good Housekeeping, it was called The Man Who Was Never Born. Lo and behold, Cary Grant, there's this debate whether he found it or the studio found it and showed it to him or what the deal was. but he wanted to do it. He wanted to turn this into a movie and be, George Bailey, which is what it became, because in the book it was George Pratt. But for whatever reason, the different screenwriters back and forth in the studio, he decided to do A Bishop's Wife, and then eventually they sold the rights to Frank Capra, and he turned it into the movie that we all know and love. He took some stuff from the old screenplays and then casts our, Jimmy Stewart, the man who should have, was born to play this role. I mean,
Yeah.
right?
He's the everyman. Pretty much in every film he's in, the Philadelphia Story and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yep.
I mean, he is the epitome, more so than Cary Grant's a little too suave.
It would have been a different movie with Cary Grant.
He's a couple of income levels above
Yeah.
the perception of like what a Jimmy Stewart character or like a
Right.
Henry Fonda would be, so he's perfect for that kind of every man type of thing.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
I think helps sell it, because he's just
Mhm.
it comes off as doesn't come off as someone who's, kind of a little bit more upper crusty the way Cary Grant just naturally
Right.
kind of appears.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think Cary Grant went the right path with his career. Who knows what it would have been like if he had done this movie. But Jimmy Stewart, he coming off of the war and,
Mhm.
I think just perfect for him,
Yeah.
And like I said, we talked about how it just wasn't, a big success. But he went on afterwards, Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, who played, Mary, to
Yeah.
do
Oh
some
my God.
radio shows. They embraced it. They loved it. But in their lifetime, it wasn't like, early on, it wasn't a big success. It was only after it went on TV that it really became the phenomenon. And it's on everybody's like top 10 list and greatest holiday movie ever
Yeah.
made.
Yeah, and you gotta, I mean, I think we also need to keep in mind that back then, the studio system was in full effect. So
Yeah.
movies were being cranked out. There are
Mhm.
thousands of movies we never even heard of that came out. Maybe
Right.
even tens of thousands from 1940 to 1950.
Mhm.
So this was just one, just like the story of Casablanca, one of hundreds of pictures that come out in a year from MGM, Warner Brothers, and
Yeah.
whatever the studios were back then, RKO. So it's easy for these things to kind of come and be forgotten. It was much more disposable entertainment because double feature. So you're seeing two films at once most of the time. And a lot of them were just kind of throwaways. So kind of probably a lot harder
Mhm.
for a film to really rise to the surface, just being this little story, which it was. Again, it turned out to be a grower, not a shower.
Mhm.
Over time is really when, like you said, when it was able to spread its wings, when
Yeah.
people were to get a bigger audience.
Yeah. And we talked about how it didn't get a lot of awards,
Yeah.
but it did one for Capra, Best Golden Globe for director. And I think the direction in this is fantastic. There's
Yeah.
the scene when George and Mary are on the phone together and their emotions are just like, that whole dance sequence when they're in the, I mean, were there really gymnasiums like that where you had retractable floors that led into a
Uh,
pool, a swimming
I
pool?
know in my high school in Dobbs Ferry, there was a pool under in the basement of the building. I
Wow.
don't know that it was retractable, but the high
Amazing.
school is an old high school.
Yeah.
I never saw it. It was always talked about that there's a pool underneath where the auditorium is.
Uh-huh.
But, so I can picture that as being something,
Yeah.
but
But
yeah,
that scene when they're dancing and they're coming close to the
yep,
edge and everybody's like, "Oh, they're gonna fall in,"
yeah,
and they don't realize it. I
yeah.
just think that's a great bit of cinema.
And you have Alfalfa Switzer in there.
Yes.
Alfalfa from The Little
He's
Rascals,
the
who,
guy who's
he
like,
kinda had trouble getting roles, but he's got an everlasting role in this one as
yeah,
the,
that's one of my favorite performances of his in his short-lived career, but, um, that's great. So let's jump into the like those iconic moments then. Even the little lesser characters like Bert and Ernie, right? The police
Mhm,
officer and the cab driver.
mhm,
You see then he's impacted their life. Nick the bartender and
yeah,
all these little characters, Violet. uh, they once Clarence enters the scene when he's, George is on the bridge and contemplating, suicide. You see all the lives that he's impacted. So let's talk about the bridge sequence. I mean,
sure.
that's where that's the pivot. That's where it changes. So he's about to jump off the bridge. His life is, he think, coming, just a disaster. And then here shows up this guy. Now, do you think they needed that like teaser at the beginning with you talked about the stars when they're talking like what are these heavenly bodies like let's check him out. You realize that there is some supernatural element to this story. Would it have worked without that preface, you think?
I think it's barely mentioned that you forget about it, and
Mhm,
it becomes more of a voiceover. Yeah, that we mentioned that, it's a very important night, like, that it's mentioned in the beginning, but then
mhm.
after that, it becomes more of a
You're right.
standard voiceover of,
Mhm,
on VE day, they cried, prayed, and wept. On VJ day, so
mhm,
it's more of like that voiceover. So you kind of forget about why exactly this is happening.
mhm.
Like it's kind of because we don't hear from Clarence again. We only hear from whoever the higher up is.
Yeah.
His voice, we hear Clarence in the very beginning, but I think as soon as he grows up, right? I think that's the last time we hear Clarence is when George is going to get the suitcase. And he's like,
Mhm.
I like George Bailey. And I think that's the last we hear of Clarence until
Yeah.
we see him, I think. Because then it
Yeah,
just
I
is a
think you're right.
standard voiceover.
Right.
So much happens that you almost forget that there's a situation involved with this.
And then Clarence is this angel who's trying to get his wings, so he has to do some good deed or do save somebody, and this is a task for him. And I think he's a character unto himself. Like if you hadn't picked George, I would have picked Clarence, to be like the greatest character, right? Because what a great comedic role, but also like he's got that sincerity too. You know,
Yeah.
I just love that moment where okay, he saves him, he jumps in because it would have been a suicide, right? Um, and at that time, also the timing of this is like after the war, after the
Mhm.
depression. So you probably had a lot of people who lost all their fortunes
Yeah.
and took their lives, and then people coming back from the war. It wasn't easy getting back into life, and so. It kind of, I think, would resonate with people at that time frame. So he's in there. Clarence jumps in. He's like, "Okay, did I do my duty? I saved his life." But no, it's not. He's not done.
Yeah.
George is still in this mental distress.
Yeah.
So he's like, "You're right," because he's like, "What would it help you if you took your life?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "You're right. It probably would have been better if I had never been born." And then that's where Clarence, the light bulb goes over his head, like, "Oh, you think we could do this? Yeah, I think we, yeah,
Yeah.
I think." So I
And
love that scene.
it's a great callback
Hmm.
to the beginning of the film because what was the first thing what's the first good deed we see George do? He helps save somebody that's drowning.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's where Clarence got the idea. He goes, "Oh, I knew if I," because he goes, "I knew if you thought I was drowning, you would come in and save me," because
Mm.
that was the first piece of information he got, like on the film
Yep.
reel of George's life.
Yeah.
So it's a great callback to jumping into the icy water
Hmm. You're right.
and needing help. That George kind of instinctual, like that's like a visceral reaction for George is jump in.
Yeah.
Don't even think, jump in and save the person that's drowning, just like Harry was all those years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. And
So
then
it's a great
that's when
callback.
it happens, it's like there's snow stops, right, for a little
Yeah,
bit, but he also starts hearing out of his busted ear,
yeah,
because he, never got slapped, never jumped into the water, all the things that had suddenly changed now, life is so different. So that's cool. I mean, I like to say that the city of Bedford Falls is a character in itself, right? The town, because just seeing it go from this idyllic place to this like sleazy Times Square, before there was a sleazy
every
Times
place is a
Square.
dance hall or a strip joint all of a sudden. Like, there's like 80 clubs in Bedford Falls, which has like, I think it looks like it has just one main drag, and everything's been replaced by a nightclub and dancing and women. It's
When
like
they walk into the bar, here's
it's
this
become
guy
like
in this
Las
like wet
Vegas.
nightgown. They like, I mean, they give him side glances, but they're just like, okay.
Yeah,
And
like,
then what
yeah.
kind of drink do you want? It's like, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's I think you can put Bedford Falls and its population as a character because the people, a lot of those, it's those small town kind of stereotypes.
Mhm,
It's like the cop that there's nothing that really ever happens in Bedford Falls, and it's like the cop is there, and then there's a cab
mhm,
driver, and there's the druggist, and there's the girl who's a little bit of a harlot, or
mhm,
kind of like a good quote unquote good time girl. So there's each, like, the town has like its stereotypical people that you kind of place into the town
mhm.
that kind of give it its flavor and its character,
Yeah,
besides the building and loan, which is a character. I
right.
think the building and loan looms large over most of the movie because it looms large over George. It's that,
Yeah,
if it wasn't for the building and loan, like, that really is like the thing that weighs everything down. The building and loan stopped his life in its tracks, and
yeah,
his caretaking of it because of, whatever he felt he owed to his father, or,
Mhm,
or again, I posit that he was his father. He was his
mhm.
father's son. As much as he tried to, not wanna be that, he didn't think that was a, because he said that too, like, that it's not really a noble life, like, trying to, scrape a nickel together and, help these people in a shabby office. So he kind of had some disdain for it himself and didn't think. It was always an albatross
Mm.
around his neck. The bank examiners were always showing up. There's a run on the bank. It's always there's someone's always checking, checking the deposits. There's always something going on that they're just trying to keep it afloat. They're building houses that are worth more than what, they're going to sell for more than what they're building them for. So they're not going to be making money. The people that sell the houses are going to be making that money ostensibly.
Yeah.
So you're right. The Bedford Falls is kind of a character. It's not just a setting, but specifically the building alone is really kind of like the cornerstone of that character.
And then it becomes it's that time right before the '50s where suddenly you had suburbia when, these small towns were suddenly becoming bigger, but they were also becoming this, like, happy place, right? Well, we look back and it probably wasn't like that, but it just became like this ideal, you know? Um, and that's what in the movie it kinda is. It's like it's growing because of the investment
Mm.
that this building and loan was happening, and then you can see the shady side of it. You see where it could, like, if somebody like Potter had control, and that's, I guess we could talk about him finally, like, the
Yeah.
evil villain of this movie, another great character, right? This wheelchair-bound, just evil kinda, you almost make him like a caricature, I guess, but he's the one that's just like, George Bailey standing in the way of control because it's that little building and loan that keeps him from having this monopoly over the town. And you see, if it wasn't there, you see what the town would have become. It would have just become
Yeah.
overdeveloped and, didn't care about people, just cared about money and became just sleazy and crappy. So what do you think about Mr. Potter?
Yeah. He literally wanted people to
Come to him.
make a pittance, but then spend that money all in town, and he happened to be the owner of everything. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a vicious cycle that you get on. But I said in the beginning, there were two people that really understood what George was, and Potter actually is the only one that really understood
Mm.
George, because there's that one scene when, after the scene with Bailey Park, and the guy comes in, Potter's like architect guy's like, hey, they're building all these things, and this young man is gonna be working for him one day. So Potter calls him in. And he's the only, unfortunately, he uses it against him, but he's the only, he knows intimately, you wanted to travel. You never got to. Wouldn't you like to do that? Wouldn't you like to make a lot of money? Don't you want to take your wife on a lot of new trips? A business trip to Europe, business trip to New York. He is literally the only person that puts a voice, literal voice, and acknowledges what George wants. He's the only one. Even though Mary knows what he wants, Mary made her wish to have George as a husband. But Potter is the only one that actually acknowledged to George
Yeah.
what he wanted to do, and that I'm the person that can make this happen for you. Right?
Yeah. And
It's
he
when you
doesn't
think
bite
about
that
it,
temptation, right?
exactly. It's
He doesn't go.
literally a deal with the devil. It's a
Mm.
handshake deal with the devil. And George is almost, he's like, and I think Potter says, he goes, oh, George Bailey, whose ship has finally come in, and Potter finally figured out how he could potentially, he can't shut the building and loan down because it'll never go away. But if you can influence the man, right? You can't influence the business
Yeah.
because there's too many people, and the townsfolk are involved. But if you could influence the man to walk away, or if you can
Mhm.
buy him, it'd be cheaper. He's like, it's cheaper probably just to pay this guy off, pay him to be work for me. So I thought it's very, when I watched it again, I thought it was very, I'm like, this is the only guy that actually says what George's dreams and understood it. And now again, he's using it for his own devious dealings.
Mhm.
But he's the only guy. Everyone else is, oh, George, he couldn't go to college. Too bad. This guy, Potter, had it down. He laid everything out in front of George, and that's why he was stunned. How much, I'll pay you $20,000 a year, 3-year contract, travel, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. But then when he shakes his hand, he realizes, we get that great kind of rant from Jimmy Stewart.
He's such a good actor, like, with scenes like that, it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's just a great, great moment, and I'm sure Potter's not used to somebody talking back to him and saying no to him and not being in his control, and, you know,
Yeah.
it's just it's great. And then did you ever see the Saturday Night Live skit,
Oh,
the
of course.
sequel? So,
Of course, the
that's
so the
because
lost footage.
that's
The
the big
lost
flaw.
footage. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the big flaw, the loophole, because like, at the end, Potter doesn't get his
yeah.
comeuppance. He's the one that stole that money and made all this terrible stuff happen. So in Saturday Night Live, right, they have that great skit with Dana Carvey as
Like, they
George,
beat
and
the
they're like
shit out of Potter, and they just
it's like
it
they
becomes like
figure out, it's
Goodfellas.
like, "Mr. Potter, let's go get him." So it's like this mob.
Yeah, they're hitting him with bats, they throw him out of the chair, they use him like a dummy, and they're,
The
like,
lost
throwing him, and
ending. Yeah, it's
it's
great.
funny because back in I guess that because there used to be a film code that bad guys had to get their comeuppance. You
Mhm.
know, if it was a gangster film, the gangster had to go to jail or he had to die. So at some point they must have relaxed that because he
Yeah.
obviously was a bad guy. He
He
stole
got
$8,000, right? But I
yeah,
guess that wasn't the reward. I guess that wasn't the point. You know, like
yeah.
the reward
'Cause the
was
ending at the end was like, it
the
didn't
life
matter.
experience.
The town came in to save
Yeah,
George just like he saved them. It's a beautiful little Frank Capra ending, it's
yeah.
like it worked really well. So it was yeah, just it all tied in. But that I love that. I take that as canon in a
Yeah,
way in my
it
head.
should they should have somebody should have made a deal with NBC, Republic or whoever owns it,
Yeah.
to put that on as a
Just put
special
that on
feature on a
a little
DVD.
bone after the credits, a
Yeah,
post-credit scene.
just, like, sneak it in, don't even make it a chapter for the people
Yeah.
that, let the DVD play by accident, and then
Mhm.
it shows up like a hidden track. It would
Exactly.
be
Yeah, and Dana
yeah,
Carvey did
because
such a great Jimmy Stewart,
Dana Carvey is kind of where I get my bad impression of Jimmy Stewart. You know, you're sitting around here and you think the whole world revolves around you. You know,
That's excellent.
and I get it from like Dana Carvey's just
Yeah, it's
was
perfect.
so great at it. It was just
Yeah. No, he's fantastic. Who else was considered for the role? I'm trying to remember. We talked about Cary
such a
Grant
question.
possibly doing it before Jimmy Stewart came
Ah,
on, but there were a couple of others that might have been. But Jimmy Stewart was just so perfect, and it was that right time of his life. And he'd worked with Frank Capra before,
yeah.
and I think did one or two after. But he was just great. And then it would be remiss not to mention Bobby Anderson, who played the young George Bailey. Those scenes in the beginning of the movie I thought was great, especially the scene with Mr. Gower
Mhm.
when he's like realizing, dude, if you
Sure.
let this medicine go, you're gonna kill that kid.
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna poison them. And it's like it's a little, over the top a little bit, but the kid was so good.
Yeah.
I think he went on to become a producer in life. His acting career wasn't that much, but that scene, and he was so good. Like you could see him growing up to be Jimmy Stewart.
Mhm.
Like I think he was a nice compliment to Jimmy Stewart in that
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, and all those films, I mean, that was the era of, like, the working character actor,
Mhm.
like Ward Bond,
Yeah.
who was Bart the cop, and Beulah Bondi, and Frank Phelan, Gloria Graham, like, these were all Thomas
Mhm.
Mitchell, even not, Thomas Mitchell, Uncle Billy, and just
Uncle Billy was so good.
yeah, it's such a it's not that's not an easy character to
Yeah,
play.
he has comic relief, but there's also this pathos and
Yeah, this tragic.
sadness. And when George Bailey yells at him because he's angry, he's like, do you know what you've done? Like, it's like, wow, like the anger is just
Yeah.
coming out. And, the poor guy has no clue what happened. He just knows the money's gone and it's his fault.
Yeah, and that's George's breaking point, right? Is
Mhm.
prison is finally a bridge too far for him. Of
Yeah.
like, you know what? I've taken enough shit. I've swallowed enough shit in my life that this is now like prison is.
I'm
I'm
not
not.
going to jail
Yeah,
for
I'm not
you,
doing that.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
And it's funny because in that scene, Uncle Billy sneaks in a line. It's very hard to hear, but when George is like asking him, like, "Where's the money?" when they're back at the office, I mean, stupid, silly old man, and Uncle Billy is like, "I went into rooms I haven't even gone into." And you catch it at the very. He says, "Since Laura died," I assume it's his
Yeah, it gives me
wife, and
chills
that's
just
and
hearing
that's
it.
what
Yeah.
it's such a throwaway line because you can barely hear it,
Mm.
but it kind of says like this guy's wife, daughter. We don't know who she is, but that's obviously something that happened to him that was like a
Yeah.
shift, and now he like lives with like all these animals. Like he has all these animals that he lives with, and would be called an eccentric. Back then, but yeah, that scene is really the break, like the psychological break for George of I'm not, one of us is going to jail and it's not going to be me. He's like,
Yeah.
I've had, I'm done
Mhm.
laying down
Mhm.
for
Yeah, it's
everybody.
not his fault.
This is
This
not
isn't his
one
fault.
I'm not taking the hit on this one.
Yeah, and you can see him just trying to figure out what can I do now? What miracle can I pull off? And the miracle becomes the angel saving his life and
Yeah.
seeing what life would have been like, if he had never been around.
Yeah, and it gets pretty dark. That whole scene when George goes back home,
Mhm.
yelling at his kids,
Mhm.
telling, Janie to stop playing the piano,
He's
when
at his
Mary's just trying,
lowest
she
point.
knows
Yeah.
something's wrong, but she's just trying to still keep the mood light. She sees he's struggling. He comes in, he's just a wreck. He looks horrible. So it from that point on, it really gets kind of dark with George, because then he's yelling at the school teacher. He's yelling at Mary, right? Because she's trying to take give me that phone.
Mhm.
I'll talk to her. So he really starts to kind of unravel pretty quick.
Yep.
Like it
And it's all
starts,
believable. It's so
yeah,
believable.
yeah, especially when he's hugging his son, when his son comes up to him and he's just hugging him and crying because he's just at a loss. Like there's,
Mhm.
things are beyond his control at this point. So
Yeah.
it's tough. It's like I said, it's an hour and a half of somebody pushing down their emotions, and then at
Mhm.
the end, you finally get this release, and you see what, like,
Mhm.
why do we have to have the family over? Why do we have to Why do we have to have all these kids? Why do we live in this house? Like all
Yeah, you
this
got
stuff
the little
comes.
part of the staircase that always
Yeah,
falls.
the
That
banister. Yeah,
annoys him.
like, it literally vomits out of him, like, everything that he's been keeping down, that he perceives, or the things that he perceives have been keeping him down, just kinda come out, like, nonstop, like, just kind of flows out to everything, you
Yep.
know? And then finally when he kicked, and then it's a beautiful shot in the living room when the kids are decorating a tree and Janie's at the piano, but they take it almost from outside of the house, where George is looking at, like, like, he has, like, a table where he was, like, building, like, a Eiffel Tower, like, doing construction that he always wanted to do, and he
Mhm.
looks at it,
Yeah, he
and
wanted to be an
he
architect. Yeah.
destroys it.
Mhm.
Like,
That's
it's,
very symbolic too,
yeah,
yeah.
like, everything. I have nothing.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
was it didn't resemble what he wanted to do, it resembled what he didn't do. At
Mhm.
that it became a reminder of how he failed at what he wanted to do, just looking at, like, the models that he was building, and just
That's great
destroying.
storytelling.
Yeah,
That's what
oh,
makes a great character, when you see the arc and you see how it changes and all the things that happen before shape who you are. It's not just this two-dimensional character that never
yeah,
changes, it's always the same and one episode after another and like TV, but it's an arc. Like, you really see the journey that this hero goes through. To become a hero, you have to go through the fire, and this is what he does. That makes that ending so powerful then when he's hugging Zuzu and he's like,
yeah.
it's just it's you feel the joy because you went with him on that journey, you know?
Yeah, because
So
he realizes how
mhm.
deeply he felt for those things and
Yeah.
how important those things were, and that's where Clarence comes in. He goes, "You really did. You really had a wonderful life. Maybe
Uh-huh.
it wasn't the life that you planned on, but that doesn't
Mhm.
mean it's any less of a good life or a fulfilling life."
Yeah.
Because of all the people that he cared. Martini didn't own the bar anymore, and Nick was there instead, and just all those, like we said in the beginning, all the butterfly effect of everything that happened. And then they,
Yeah.
of course, leave Mary for last. She's a, where's Mary? She's an old maid. All right. What was she in her, like, late 30s? Like,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
before, like, I don't think you've got plenty of time still.
I
Like
know.
they really kind of, she's an
Yeah,
old maid.
there's these, like, Reddit discussions about would all that have really turned out bad if George had never been born? Like, because they were like, all the things that happened, it's like, maybe his brother wouldn't have even gone to the ice skating rink if it wasn't for George, you know? And, would Mary really she would have maybe gotten together with Sam and, she
Well,
wouldn't have
they
been
did
a
show what happened, though. They showed that he
It's like,
did
yeah, yeah,
get killed, and,
yeah,
there
yeah,
was, unless that's
right.
another multiverse, that
Yeah, the whole multiverse.
there's a
All the people that
616
were in
floating
the
around.
war that he didn't save then when he went to war would have
Yeah,
died too, so it's just a great premise. And I love those kind of alternate reality, kind of who knows
yeah.
how, little butterfly effect. Something will change and then it'll change your life.
I think
And then
I think it resonates
it totally
with
resonates.
everybody, because everybody goes through those crises of conscience, right?
Yeah.
Where you think, "Oh, what am I doing? What does my life mean? What does it all mean?
Mhm.
What's my impact on things?" So it really kind of brings it forward. Also, it brings it to you, and in a lot of ways, it puts a mirror up to you and say,
Yeah.
"Well, yeah, everything's not about, like, the giant brass ring. Sure, that's great, but there's plenty of little wins, and there's plenty of wins, on the street level that
Yeah.
make things fulfilling. And it's more about what you make of your life, not about what you haven't done. It's about what you have, not what you didn't get.
Mhm.
You know, and that's really what the I think what the message delivers is that he spent his time looking at things he didn't have
Mhm.
instead of understanding what he had and how important that was, how there were other people that didn't have,
Yeah.
and all the people that he helped.
And is this one of the, I don't wanna say greatest love stories ever, but this is a pretty nice love story between George and Mary, and I think Donna Reed pulls it off so well.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole thing where, "You want the moon? I'll get you the moon," right? I mean, it's just corny lines like that that Jimmy Stewart can deliver and make it sound like, "Okay, yeah, I could see how she would fall in love with him for saying a line like that," you know what I mean? It's like it's really amazing, and Donna Reed deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised that they both did a bunch of radio versions of it after the movie, and kind of for a couple of years, I think they did,
Yeah.
TV and, just kind of radio and bringing it up. So,
Yeah, and she's an absolute stunner. I mean, she is just absolute
oh, yeah.
beautiful woman, but also a great actress. I mean,
Mm.
having one or the
Like I
other,
said, that phone call
she's
scene
got
is
both.
just, like,
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, when she's just kind of like, we could both listen in and
Mhm.
just everything, just her being the rock, her performance of always, there was the one scene when the Martinis got their house and they were at the front door and Sam Wainwright pulls up and George sees him and he says to Mary, like, oh, Sam Wain like it was another one of those instances where he was getting that look when
Mhm.
Sam shows up and he's like, "Oh, there's Sam Wainwright." She's like, "Who cares?" Right? Like, she's like, "That's not. I don't care. I'm not interested in that. I've got what I want, and where it's about helping these people. But he
Yep.
was always about like he was always still
Mm.
looking beyond. But she was always trying to keep him ground, like understood his dreams, but also understood that maybe there's a greater purpose. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where she lands in that though, because she knew all those things from the beginning that he wanted to be
Mhm.
an explorer and from the get go. I'm in the
Yeah.
National Geographic Society. So is it a thing of she knew what was best for
Mhm.
him?
Yeah, and once you have a family and kids, I guess, too, like, that grounds you a little bit,
Yeah. But
you
there's a
know?
question about Mary, like, is this about Mary also knowing what was best for George and George thinking that's what he wanted, but Mary knowing that that wasn't what George was meant for. George was
Yeah.
meant for actually, it turns out George was meant for greater things, right?
Yeah.
All the people he helped and the lives he
Yeah.
saved and the impact that he's had.
And in the end, you also realize that all these little characters, they impacted him too. They
Yeah,
made him the person that he became, right?
yeah.
So, have you seen any of like the spin-offs or the remakes that happened afterwards, or any of them come to mind? I mean, there were like I remember seeing them at the time and not even thinking it was like
Yeah,
a It's
I
a
I
Wonderful Life. Like there was the one where
everything.
the gender switch. It happened one Christmas. So Marlo Thomas plays Mary Bailey.
Yeah.
Orson Welles was Mr. Potter in that one. I remember that. I remember seeing that. Oh, and then there was Merry Christmas, George Bailey on PBS, 1997. Bill Pullman, he played George.
I think they become a little, my problem with most remakes is they're a little too self-aware.
Yeah,
You can't
it's
help
like
but
too
be
on the nose. You got to do every beat of the movie, and it's
right,
almost like you're mimicking it or something.
exactly. You're aware of the source material, so you're damned if you do and you're damned if you
Mhm.
don't, right? You're
Yeah,
damned if you follow 'cause, "Oh, well, they just did the same thing," and then if you do something that's different, well, this isn't really like the one I like, and then some of them in later years, more recent things are a little too self-aware, they're a little too
mhm,
self-referential,
yeah,
and the thing about the original is that it's self-contained and
yeah,
it's of its time, but it's not dated.
mhm,
Meaning the things that happen, World War II, whatever, but beyond that, it's just, daily things that happen in someone's life, running a business, having a family, and I think remakes get a little too hip for their own good
yeah,
to, throw things in. So I
yeah,
just like when they
yeah.
redid Casablanca and then it was like a TV show, they did it like with David Soul, I think.
Yes,
What?
yes.
Why?
I guess because it becomes at one point right. It was in the public domain. That's when they did those colorized versions, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was one of the ones that I remember seeing, and they did
yeah,
3 colorized versions, which I
yeah.
didn't know. I thought it was just that
And
one.
then, I went to go watch it on, Amazon Prime,
Mhm.
and they offered me, an abridged version of It's a Wonderful Life. It's cut down to like an hour and 45 minutes and
Wow.
it says still retains the ending, but it appears that they cut
The
a
beginning.
lot of the fat from, like, the first 2/3 of the film
Yeah, I
or
feel
three
like a lot of
quarters of
people
the
are like
film,
that, where they
and it's
like
called the abridged version. It's called It's a Wonderful Life, the abridged version, and it's on Amazon Prime.
wow.
It's
I
like,
guess people short attention span, they're like, "I know you don't wanna sit through the
yeah,
whole movie. You wanna get to the good parts." Well, but
but
you
I
need
think,
that. You need that beginning to kind of make the good part, the ending, as good as it is,
yeah,
you know?
and, I don't know what they cut out, but maybe they're cutting out some of the subtle nuances that make this film what it is. I mean, if you're cutting out scenes that you think are innocuous,
Mhm.
again, maybe in the overall scheme of things, they seem that way, but we could be missing a look, we could be
Yeah,
missing a reaction that really kind of fills in some of the background of the character that we don't
yeah.
get with words. So if they're cutting stuff out that appears, I should probably go skim through it and see, like,
Yeah, I'd be interested in checking that out too, so
what
I
they
should look
did.
that up. 'Cause I remember, I mean, what a disaster for these filmmakers losing the rights or thinking they lost the
Oh,
rights, when they started making the colorized version. I remember reading that Frank Capra wanted input. He
uh,
was like, "I wanna tell you what color that should be," or and they were like, "Nope,
nah,
we don't need you.
we're good.
Just let our computer do it," you
Yeah,
know?
we'll have our
He was
colorist
so
guy do it in
frustrated.
1992 or
Yeah, he
whenever it
was
came
so
out,
frustrated, and,
every suit
this
was green, every women's dress was
they had the
pink,
that was the
like,
problem with those colorizations. It was like
yeah,
this pastel kind of
yeah, they had,
look
like,
to
5
it, you know?
colors. Yeah,
Yeah,
they had 5 colors to work with, and everybody's suit was green, and every woman's silk dress was pink, right? It's like,
yeah,
okay, I guess that's how it might have been
yeah,
for one person that wore a green suit, but
yeah, yeah.
oh,
And
yeah.
then to your point about it, these remakes is kinda like not really having anything new to give, right? You had the Muppets did a version of it. Nicolette Sheridan did this Hallmark Channel version, The Christmas Spirit. They changed the name. She played this character called Charlotte Hart, but It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
It's like it's like, what's the point? Are you remaking it or what, you know?
Well, and it's I don't wanna sound hypocritical,
Mhm,
but it's not like A Christmas Carol. A Christmas
yes.
Carol has been remade from, like, time immemorial, so
Mhm,
every 7, 8, 10, 12 years, you're gonna get a new version. When
mhm.
you mentioned the Muppets, I immediately thought of, like, the Muppet Christmas Carol,
Yes.
and some material is well adapted for that.
Mhm,
This was a movie that was made that just kind of became popular, wasn't a perennial, it wasn't like something that was popular from the beginning of time. They said,
mhm.
"Well, let's take another crack at it in 1954. Let's take a crack at it in 62." So it's not like it's kinda like you're late to the party. It's like, we've had this for 40 years already, not really wanting something new.
Yeah, that's a
Kinda
good
like that Return to
analogy
Oz
because
that
yeah,
Disney,
yeah,
it's like, which was a interesting film statement. It was
yeah, but everybody was
totally darker,
comparing it to the original,
and you
to
can't,
the
that
original
was,
movie,
yeah,
not the
and
story.
that struck out on its own with its own
Yeah.
feel and look, and yeah, we're gonna
I
divorce
remember
ourselves
people
from that.
being angry that it wasn't a
Yeah,
musical, didn't have
and
any
now it's a
songs
cult
in it.
classic. Now it's like, "Oh
Yes,
my
it is
god, that movie's so creepy and it's so
Yeah,
weird."
exactly. Which, you wonder if there's gonna be, like, a creepy, weird version of It's a Wonderful Life. They try to make sequels, right? They turned it into a musical. They try to they did a sequel called Clarence, made for TV. Robert Carradine played Clarence, right, on Further Adventures. I never saw it, but I'm curious to look it up because I think Clarence is a great character. You're like, "Okay, now that he got his wings, what did he
I
do with his life?" You figure it's
was
Highway
it
to
was it
Heaven, it's like
I was just saying, was
Michael
that called
Landon.
Highway to Heaven? Then they, Michael Landon, and
Yeah,
there's your
he maybe
Clarence right
Clarence,
there.
maybe he's yeah, exactly. And then there was a book, a novel called The Last Temptation of Clarence Oddbody. So, what if he hadn't saved
Directed by
George?
Scorsese, the
What
film
happened to
version?
all these characters if George died? It's like I'm like, "Oh boy." I'd
Yeah.
read that,
I could
So
see a musical, yes. A musical would be like, absolutely could see an adaptation of that with songs that, explain the story and go into that. A musical, I'd be like, "Okay,"
Mhm.
'cause you're literally bringing it to a different medium, but just to remake
Yeah,
this film, I don't see it. If you're gonna do
yeah.
something different with it, yeah, like a musical, that would be kinda neat, because you could have some
Mhm.
set pieces and some big things that happen and some great tunes that, Mary gets a song about how she loves George, and he gets a song about longing to travel, like,
Mhm.
it could be a great, that could be a medium that would be, suitable to adapt it, but
Yeah.
just make a video game then, for crying out loud.
I would play it.
Like a simulate, like a sim, right? You have to live George Bailey's life. You have to decide, like, close the building and loan, yes or no, and then you decide, and then it takes you on the
I'm sure somebody will come up with it and do it. They did theater versions. They've done, I just it's good. Now, what could have been, they were gonna do a sequel, and the actress that played Zuzu, right?
Uh-huh.
She was gonna revive the character, and they came pretty close to doing it.
That
But
could
in
be
the
interesting.
end, Paramount, I think, owned the rights at that point, and they were like, "No, don't, no." They nixed it. But I would have been interested to see, what's her name? Carolyn Grimes was the one who
Yeah.
played the little girl, so adorable, so cute, Zuzu, right? And she kept her little petals, right? Zuzu's petals. So they were gonna do it. It's a Wonderful Life, the rest of the story, a sequel. And then I don't know if Zuzu was gonna have a cameo. I mean, she was pretty old at
She's
that
still
point.
alive. She's still alive now, so.
S s I mean, I would, like, give her a chance. Why
Sure.
not? Why not? And then Paul McCartney, the great Paul McCartney, has been working on a new musical for Broadway, and I would like to see that because it's Paul McCartney. How bad could it be? I hear silence and crickets.
I love Paul McCartney, but his stuff outside of music, outside of popular music, hasn't been so successful. He directed the, Give My Regards to Broad Street. Did you ever see that film?
I have not.
Exactly. I saw it in the theater, and I wasn't even a Beatles fan yet, and I was like, "Oh my god, this was
Oh,
a
man.
a turd."
Yeah, I mean,
It could
everything is not, the
if he's
golden
gonna do a
touch.
musical, we just talked about that, so yeah, I could, let McCartney take a crack at it. I don't know if he's suited for it, though.
Yeah.
His music is
It might be like U2 with
too hopeful.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's his I don't see him going into dark places often with his music as he's one of the greatest musicians of our generation and possibly of all time easily, but I don't know if he's the right one for you. There's gotta be someone that has a darker edge to them that they can mine some of that while still having some of a hopeful outlook on stuff, so I don't know.
Good point.
Tough nut to crack. He would
Yeah.
need to collaborate with somebody. He could write the music, someone else could maybe write the lyrics.
Mhm. Yeah. And as of this recording, Paramount is working on a remake set in modern times. I mean, what is it? What is out there that has not been remade or the
Yeah.
subject of a remake? I mean, they'll remake anything eventually. Citizen Kane will eventually get remade
I
into
don't
a,
know, that no one wants to touch that one, it seems. It's like, that might be the only sacred cow left in Hollywood where it's like, "Yeah,
yeah,
we don't know what to do with that one, so we'll just,
yeah.
because he had a hard enough time when he made it. So
Hmm.
imagine, things the way things are now with people that perceive any slight to be like, "Oh, that must be about me."
Exactly.
So, yeah, I don't know. Is it in production now, the remake, or
It's in development.
in development? Okay. So
Yeah.
it could stay on the shelf then,
Yeah, it
hopefully.
could be development hell and never get
Yeah,
made,
it's like
but
you don't need it. It's not like the movie was lacking something. It's not like you say,
right.
"Oh, well, this movie was great, but if it had this," right? No, like, if there was some movies like some movies are really great. Some films
Mhm.
are almost perfect, but if it had had a longer fight scene, if this character had
Mhm.
done, gotten this, or if this was, this was left unresolved in the movie, so we don't know what
Yeah.
happened. This movie is good as it is. Like, we don't need to really know what happened to Potter because it's not that important. We know he's a scumbag. We know he keeps the money. That's not what the point is. What new are you going to say with this? Except be more cynical, right? I said, just bring it into the times now, which is like, yeah, everybody's, with a wink, wink.
Mhm.
And I don't know that people would buy it, right? It was more of an innocent time back then
Yeah.
too, right? Yeah, but I could be totally wrong.
Same
It
here.
could come out, I could go see it and be crying
And I'll be
and
like,
be like,
"It's
"Oh my god."
better. It's even
Matthew
better."
McConaughey.
Yeah.
Matthew
Maybe
McConaughey as George Bailey.
they'll use, like,
Alright,
CGI
alright.
to make, Jimmy Stewart the part of Clarence or something, you know?
Bring him back. They just be
Get
no.
the estate to okay it, you know? That would be an atrocity. That would be
Yeah.
awful. I'm
No,
sorry I even
I
put it
like
out
the
there in the universe when I said that,
I like the
because
idea of
somebody will
Matthew
do it.
I like the idea of Matthew McConaughey as George
Mm,
Bailey.
that'll be good.
He's got
He
the
could do it.
everyman
Yeah, he could do it.
look.
So what else have we not said? Anything else on your mind about the character
Uh,
or,
Well,
you
there's a
know
little controversy that you mentioned, which I did
Oh,
research
yes.
about Bert and Ernie. The two friends, Bert and Ernie, Bert the cop and Ernie the cab driver, Ernie Bishop,
Mhm.
the cab driver, and whether or not they have any relation to two other famous other pair of Bert and Ernie that most kids grew up with, right? That probably the
Yeah, when
first Bert and
kids
Ernie
hear
you've
the
ever
name
heard
Bert
of,
and Ernie, that's what they'll think of is Sesame Street,
the
not
Sesame Street.
these characters, you
Yeah,
know? But they're 2 great little supporting characters in It's a Wonderful Life.
yeah. I did look it up. I did the
Mhm,
research, and Jim Henson said he had no, like, again, you have to think about, you can't think about it in the now times. You have to think about it in late '60s when Sesame Street was being
mhm.
developed. Like, It's a Wonderful Life wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing.
It
Yeah,
wasn't like Wizard of Oz. It wasn't this great film. He's like, yeah, we just were spitballing names that sounded good together, and we came up with Bert and Ernie. You know? And it's just one of those great happens. I love that people make the connection, and if it's a
yeah,
link and if it gets somebody to watch the film, so
yeah.
much the better, you know?
And I forget which Muppet movie it is, but in the background, they're playing It's a Wonderful Life, and then there's that scene where they're like, "Bert, Ernie!" And Bert and Ernie kinda turn around, they're like, "What?" Kinda stops it dead in the tracks, you know?
So even the
They acknowledge
Muppets
it.
got a little meta. Yeah, they got a
Yeah,
little
they
meta with
acknowledge it.
themselves. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I said, it's just a film that is populated with characters that
Mhm.
it's en
Every single one is
yeah.
so
It's
great.
it's enjoyable to watch even though it does get heavy. There's actually shooting at the end, right? Bert is shooting at Jimmy Stewart. He's, like, taking shots and at him in the middle of the it gets this guy, this guy's mentally ill. There's something wrong with this guy because he's running around town, like, terrorizing people. He's
Yeah.
terrorizing, the bar. He's terrorizing Mary. He's going
Mhm.
to the cemetery, and he's going to the house. So it goes to dark places, but I think that's why I think, it's easy to push this off as a holiday film, but it's a fantastic character study.
Yeah, and I think if someone has never seen it from beginning to end, they should do themselves a favor and check it out because I think it makes the ending because there are people out there who've probably just seen bits and pieces of
Mhm.
it, never really sat down from the opening credits to the closing credits and
Yeah,
watched it. It is a powerful experience. I think it's a great movie, and you really
absolutely.
see that character, the journey that they go on. So,
Yeah, it's an acting class. I mean, Jimmy Stewart,
mhm,
the whole movie literally rests on his shoulders. So
mhm,
if he's not up to the challenge, and I think if I recall correctly, he kind of was feeling that he wasn't up to the challenge because, like you said, he had come back from World War II where he had served and really wasn't feeling it. Wasn't sure if he was going to act again. I think he
mhm,
wasn't sure if he was going to act again and what he was going to do. So this kind of aligned with
mhm,
that uneasy feeling, of not fitting in and not knowing,
yeah,
what you're gonna do. So it just,
yeah. I'm
one of
glad he
those great.
did.
Yeah,
And I'm glad that Frank Capra made this movie, and I'm sure he thought it was a failure, and he's like, but it turned
on to the
into
next one,
yeah, but it
right?
turned
That's what they
into
did.
this great you wonder how many movies nowadays that bomb that we don't even think much about where future generations might be they'll be like, "That's one of the greatest movies of all time," you know?
Yeah,
So, it just tells you there's a lot of great stuff out there just because it's not a box office success, don't give up on it. Just,
yeah, waiting to be discovered, absolutely.
yeah. Thank you, Dean. This has
Oh,
been
yeah.
so much fun.
Oh, it's been a blast.
You are one of my inspirations, so I am
Oh,
grateful that you and Eric have been on my show now, and hopefully we'll be on it again in the future. Those of you who are listening, please check out 3324 Podcast. It is wonderful. They talk about movies and music, and it's fantastic.
and
They
we
have
have
more than
Nick on
200 episodes
Nick on a lot. He's known as the
once in a while.
professor. Nick is the professor. When we do a film episode, Nick
Exactly.
is our go-to guy because he brings the smoke
It's
and he
always
brings the
fun
fire.
conversations, yeah. So check it out. If you like this episode, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. What did I leave out? Share it with your friends. Like, subscribe, all the fun stuff. But until next time, I am Nick. Thank you to my friend Dean. I'll catch you next time on Greatest Characters in Pop Culture History.